Like,
So that's Lance and that's Allison. We're on the 24th floor drinking some wine, and this was very impromptu, but we're just going to get a chance to be able to talk sales. And I hope the sound works right now because it's giving me 2 bars, but we're just going to keep rolling because everyone's heard these things anyway, and sometimes the audio cuts out, sometimes it stays in, so we'll get going. So have a chance, an opportunity to get to talk to 2 people that are at teams all the time, having conversations with people all the time. And anyone that's heard me has always heard me say, when talk comes to sales trainers, my favorite sales trainer to listen to personally is Lance. He's paying me for that too, by the way. But
I'm a huge sponsor of Brett's show at this point, premier sponsor.
So recently, I always seems weird, but I always get some feedback when I put something from Lance up or I put something from another trainer up. People are always like, what are you doing? Like, why are you promoting another trainer? Or I'm like, well, if they're producing something of real value and they're doing something that I think is important that I don't think sports is doing well enough, I want to make sure that it becomes a point of discussion. It doesn't have to be my words to elevate what's happening in sports business. It can be anyone saying it. So recently, Lance did a great riff on pipeline management. So the goal is to start there and then just see where this conversation takes us. But so Lance, you have this great thing talking about pipeline management. There's going to be a lot of people that are listening to this that don't even know what pipeline management is. So can we talk about, because a lot of teams still don't think about that every day. So can you talk about what pipeline management is and then why it's so critical to how we think about sales?
Well, so what's it? And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, Brett. Obviously, I'm a huge fan, and we worked together going probably back almost a half decade back to the crew. We've been involved coaching situations and training situations. You've been out to my offices in Columbus, Ohio, so definitely an affinity there. And Allison Schuller, my VP, is with me. We're actually doing some things this week with the Texans, sponsorship, sales sponsorship and suites, and actually Allison's working with the retention side of sponsorship and actually the retention side of suites. And so what Brett's referring to is I actually did a little bit of a video on pipeline management the other day. And you got 2 issues with pipeline management. One is a lot of junior sales leadership don't really respect it. So essentially, it's forecasting. So I know a lot of you will once a night probably before you go out to a golf outing, you go on a trip or something, you're going to look at the forecast. You're going to look at like your AccuWeather. You're going to look on your phone and you're going to say, hey, what's the forecast? Or another way to look at it is essentially before you hop on an appointment, you're going to jump on your Waze app and you're going to go, let me forecast the traffic. So I know I got an appointment at 10:30. I'm leaving at 10:15. How can I speed my way through this? So you're going to forecast roadkill. You're going to forecast speed traps. You're going to forecast fog on the road. All those things. Essentially, pipeline management is your ability to kind of see what's coming down the lane and how much resources you're going to actually put to it.
So, Allison, you're the VP of sales for Lance. So can you talk about how you use a pipeline management document and how you go about your day-to-day?
We actually kind of count backwards, to be honest, because we work backwards from our big goal for the company or the department and count back into, okay, if this is the team goal or the department goal, what's the individual goal? From there, what's our closing ratio? From that percentage closing ratio, how many pitches do we need to make to hit that closing ratio? Well, based on that, how many appointments do we need to be setting to get to that amount of pitches? And based on our show rate, because we all know appointments cancel, appointments reschedule, appointments don't happen. How many appointments do we need to schedule to get that appointment to actually happen? And then based on that, backwards into activity. How many calls do we need to make to get that amount of appointments? So we kind of take the bigger picture and kind of divide backwards.
Which is interesting if you think about it. What's essentially that Waze app doing? You're putting in the address.
And Brad.
And you're sitting there going, okay, hey, based on traffic patterns, based on circumstances.
You need to leave at X amount of time.
Here's the time, here's the resources you need. I mean, analogy-wise, that's what this comes down to. And your only alternative to that is smile, dial, use the trial, and go the extra mile. Like, Like most salespeople just pull the trigger, it's ready, fire, aim. And that is not a way to go through life, folks.
So one of the things that I talk about, because whenever I've talked with my sales trainer, or I've written about it on the site, one of the things that you see all the time is inflated pipelines, right? So you look at a rep who's like, oh, I want my manager to be able to see that I'm doing really, really well.
Politically
That's
good.
right.
Yeah, so let me fill this up with all the stuff that I can possibly fill this up with. Can you guys talk really quickly about from the rep side? So I think a rep can very clearly understand, once they understand what a pipeline is, they can see why it's a good thing for their boss. Can we talk about the rep individually? Why is it, and reverse engineering is a great way to look at it, but a lot of salespeople are bad at math.
Sure.
So what are the reasons that if they find a pipeline they like, what does it actually help a rep to be able to be successful?
I put a video out this week on LinkedIn, so a little plug for myself, get a chance to look at it. If you look at, and I'm asked constantly, like, who the better reps are. Like, I would tell you, if ask me real quick, Brett, like, who are some of the better reps you know out there? Just ask me the question.
So the best sales rep I ever worked with.
No, you asked me that.
Sorry. Who's the best reps you worked with?
So right now in the field, I would say like Spencer Cherney at the Phoenix Suns. The guy is freaking a killer, straight up assassin, right? Another guy that impressed the shit out of me was Hiller over at NYFC, man. That guy's this guy's a killer, man. Smile like he has it. So when
National Sales Center, by the way.
That's good.
That's
But like you know me pretty well. Like you have to stand out to like impress me. So these guys, what they're doing is they're sitting there going, if you really think about it from a rep standpoint, you got to be realistic with yourself, right? Bottom line, if you looked at everybody you're talking to, so say you had a list of 100 people you're talking to, say you had a list of 10 people. Let's be realistic about it. 10 of the people, or out of 100, 33 and a third % of the folks you're talking to will buy from you in the near future. Because remember, sales is about timing a little bit. So near future, let's call it 0 to 4 months, 0 to 6 months. Well, another 33 and a third % of the folks that you're talking to will probably buy from you in the far future. So the ones that are going to buy you from the near future, you're going to be a hunter. 33 and a third, that second grouping that are going to buy from you in the far future, you're actually a farmer. You're a planter. They're not going to buy from you now. They're going to buy from you next season. It's timing. 33 and a third % of the folks you're talking to aren't going to buy from you, even if you sold them for $1 for 90 cents. And here's the thing. Don't ever confuse somebody that wants to do something as against are they able to do something. You got these professional tire kickers. Here's the other thing, too. That last third, they may actually just have really good people skills. How many of you out there have talked to somebody, really had a first call with them, they said, hey, follow up with me. The first call was great, and it goes to you. Well, you've confused sometimes people skills with somebody interested. So when you go a third and a third and a third, you start becoming realistic. The problem with the grouping I just gave you is group 2 and group 3 seem really similar.
Right.
So what you got to be realistic about, every single one of you listening to this, and the difference between the best salespeople and the average salespeople out there, the best people in pro sports and entertainment selling know that everybody's not going to be a buyer. The average salesperson that we work with actually think everybody's a buyer. Last year we assessed 1,500 salespeople in pro sports. The biggest difference between the high performers and the mid-level performers were the mid-level performers thought everybody was a buyer, and the high-level folks don't. So you talk about a Hiller, you talk about a Spence, you talk about Spencer. Those guys are killers. They know everybody's not going to buy from them.
I think along the way, sorry, I was just having a sip of wine.
We're drinking wine here. Little cheers so you guys can hear that. Cheers.
So I've also found that when you're in control of your pipeline, so I think, one of the things that's a problem in professional sports that's not outside. So outside of professional sports, like I work at CEB. Nobody woke up in the morning being like, oh yeah, CEB might call me today. So in professional sports, we tend to become so desperate just because we have those people that will talk to us irregardless. Yeah, right. They'll talk to us irregardless. So can you talk about how ownership of a pipeline management document will, Allison, maybe you can talk about this because you're doing this consistently. How does ownership of a pipeline management document make you a less desperate seller? Because I think we get oh my gosh, someone picked up the phone. We made 100 calls today. We talked to 15 people. I've got to get something out of everyone I talk to. Like, how does actually owning a pipeline management document make us a less desperate salesperson?
Well, I think if you're realistic about it, right, like it helps you manage your own expectations and your own activity and your own to-do list.
Absolutely.
Because we talk in training, Lance and I both talk in training a lot about being a prisoner of hope, right? You think about your pipeline, and like so many salespeople, we joke all the time, how many people on the sales team come back to you and say, you know, oh, you had a meeting with so-and-so today, like, how was your meeting? How many times has a rep ever told you, like, oh, God, I bombed my meeting?
Yep.
It's always, oh, it was great. Oh, it's so good. They're totally going to buy. They're in.
Nobody's ever had a bad.
Yeah, it's always a good, oh, yeah, it's good. And as soon as you start pressing them, I'm like, oh, so they're going to buy? Like, when are they going to come through? Like, what's it look like? All of a sudden, the salesperson's like, oh, well, you know, we got this thing with the thing, like, we got to check off the so-and-so. But they're totally going to buy. They're totally going to buy. It's a great meeting.
They just got to check with these 37 people.
That's right.
And once they just get through that, they'll be on board.
And like 18 months later, right, like they're in your farming group in that second 33 to 30%, you realize like, oh, maybe that meeting took a little longer, maybe that process took a little longer than anticipated.
Well, the other thing that's interesting about that, right, like it is if you're out there listening, you know you have an issue. Number one is when you're following up with some people, you have to borrow your buddy's cell phone to call. You got an issue. By the way, I'm going to recommend all of you. Yeah. No. It's not even that. There's 2 apps out there you all want to get. Like I was talking to LA Clippers last week, and I go, how many of you guys have burn numbers? And somebody goes, are you watching Billions? I'm like, no, there's burn numbers out there.
Or just or just local basic NBA.
Right, exactly. So all you out there, for all you sales jockeys out there, go to TextNow or TextMe.com. You can get burn numbers all day long. You can change up your numbers. So if you have to hide your number, do that. But I need you to recognize something else. If you have to use a burn number to call somebody that you think's really hot in your pipeline, it's creepy. You probably have an issue. You have a little, maybe you don't like yours, but you're a little bit, in some places you'll go to jail for that kind of stuff.
So one of the things that I talk about in my training, so I got my rule of thumb, so feel free to steal this, is
Yeah.
if you're looking at someone's name who you once had a good conversation with and now you hate them, it's time to break up with them. Like you're looking like you've got Lance Tyson on your pipeline and you're like, oh, God, I hate that guy. Like, we had such a good conversation, and now that guy, he returned my call. Like, what an asshole. Like, that is the moment where it's like, time to break up with them, because
No doubt.
it's that internal trigger, right? That's just, there's a reason that I hate him now. Like, there's a reason that if I ever saw Lance, like, I'd have to hold back punching him in the face.
Well,
which I think anyway.
Well, there's no doubt. Like, well, the other thing is, I think Brett just thought I was going to hit him. Little flinching going on here. I think the other thing, though, is if you think what he was saying is, do some of you actually confuse somebody's good people skills with actually being interested in you? I think sometimes, like, we talk to people.
Especially depending on your market.
Yeah, like we do a lot with the Timberwolves, and like we call it Minnesota Nice. You talk to some people up there, it's like, hey, how are you? Right? They're really excited about hearing from you, but we confuse people skills with actually them being interested in what we do.
I lived in Minnesota, and everyone there says Minnesota Nice. It's actually Minnesota passive aggressive.
That's exactly
So cheers to that. We'll drink to that. We'll cheers to that. There we go. All right. And so I think one of the things that it takes a natural lead into the conversation from pipeline management to lead qualification, right? Because you talked about it. That's one of the biggest problems you'll ever see for a young salesperson. I remember at CEB when I transitioned from scheduling the meetings to going out on the meetings. I'm 38. I still look like I'm 31. When I was 25, I looked like I was 12. And so I just thought every meeting was a great meeting, but in reality, there's a lot of people being really nice because they thought I looked like their son.
You're endearing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, he looks like my we can't be mean to him. He looks too nice. And so, can you talk about, for a rep who's getting no signs in that meeting that this is a bad meeting? What are ways to actually look at secondary things to say, there's actually a real problem here.
So I think there's two things there. I want to reiterate one point. Just being when I was in LA last week, we were really talking about this. And I think, and I think back to last year, we're doing some stuff with NFL on Location and Dan Rosenthal and Brian Basso. Big fans of those guys, especially when Rosenthal was when he was in sales. And kind of what's interesting is there's this ripcording effect that's going on right now. It's at least what we call it, where don't ever confuse. If you're talking to somebody and they answer the phone and you're just starting the pitch, it's called ripcording.
Yeah.
And then you don't have an appointment, that does not count as an appointment. You guys need to all realize that. The best qualifier any of you have is literally a scheduled appointment. The hardest sell any of you actually will make, bottom line, back to what Brett was saying, is asking for time off somebody's calendar. So one of the first things you need to do is start looking each week and start going, we had a lot of conversations last week, but none of them were scheduled. You got an issue, and you got to work on that. So getting time off somebody's calendar is absolutely custom critical. Then you got to start looking at buying and warning signals. And so let's kind of break this down a little bit. Most salespeople don't know the difference between a buying signal and a warning signal. A buying signal is anything a buyer says or does that indicates interest. A warning signal is anything a buyer says or does that indicates disinterest. Now, they both X each other out because sometimes, if I'm sitting across from Allison right now, her hands are in a praying motion, right? They're folded. She's leaning forward like a tiger, so she has tiger blood going, in a little wine. Is she interested, or is she just annoyed that I'm 48 years old and I'm getting long in the tooth, or does she want to say something? Am I misreading it? Am I reading it right? I don't know. None of us sell tarot cards, crystal balls, or magic 8 balls. Now, you might do magic 8 ball, you might do crystal meth, but I don't think we sell any of that stuff, right?
Part of the sales trading.
The bottom line is, I don't think you sell any of that stuff. You can't necessarily tell what Allison's thinking. I don't know. So I might have to ask her. But don't confuse a buying signal and a warning signal with an objection. An objection is anything a buyer says or does that indicates disinterest that causes sale from moving forward, right? So I think at all times, if you go back to what Brett said, very savvy advice, you're constantly reading what they do. Now, this is really important, so let's get deep here. There's a book out there called Decisive by Chip and Dan Heath. I bought the book because it's lime green. I buy covers of books, right? What do you want me to do? The book Decisive, they actually talk about a concept called contribution bias. And contribution bias is literally what we look for when we want to do something. So if we want to go out and buy a new iPhone, we actually look for the contributing factors that will help us decide on whether or not we need the iPhone. But the contributing factors are mostly in our favor. As salespeople, we're looking for all the things that are going on, right, that are going to help us make that sale. So today at the Texans, for instance, we're literally talking to one of their sponsorship people, and they were meeting with this one company that they had 4 meetings in 1 month. And I looked at him, I said, that seems really fast. And he goes, I know. And we're doing postmortems on the sale. So meaning we're looking at sales that are dead. And I go, did anything feel too good to be true? He said, the whole thing felt too good to be true. I said, well, when you're driving defensively, the gas or the brake can literally be your friend. And he goes, what do you mean the brake? I said, well, it doesn't sound like any point early did you pump the brakes and say, what do you not like about this? Yeah. And we didn't test it at all. So I think what happens a lot of times as salespeople, we're just looking out for all the contributing factors that are going to make our deal. We're not asking to slow it down or not. Remember, your strongest close is your weighing close. What if the reason you don't want to do this as opposed to the reason you want to? That's how people weigh things out, and that's what has to be considered.
Whether you're selling a partial plan or a multi-million-dollar stadium naming rights deal, isn't every reason why they're not going to do it so much more important than every reason why they're going to do it? I think. Yeah. So we
that's what they're going to talk about, right?
Well, but they're not. And a lot of times.
No, but I mean that's what they're going to talk about.
Yeah. And so we talk about this all the time. Is like an infomercial is a great example, right? when it's on the screen and the Jinsu knife is cutting through the shoe and you're engaged and you're like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like, this
I need that knife.
I need this.
These are all the things I need it for.
And it's only this. And then all of a sudden it goes off the screen and like your first instinct rolls back from here are all the reasons why I'm buying it, like to all of a sudden being like,
do I need it?
I don't
like,
need a knife.
why would I want to cut through my shoes?
Yeah.
Like, I actually wear my shoes.
I'll my finger out.
I've got, like, one of the things I say is, like,
think about how important that is.
I've got 24 steak knives. I don't know 24 people I like enough to buy
Just
steak
give me
for.
all the
To buy steak for. Like,
Same.
why do I need 24
I like
people?
two.
Yeah.
2 people keep.
I've got a lot of hamburger friends. I don't have a
Well, so see how important is what you just said, and for all of you, as loud as we're being, and good time we're having here, I want you to think about what he just said. Like, bottom line is, when you look at all your closes, like, if you've ever been in sales training with me, you'll hear me say several times, or Allison say this, and I'm sure Brett has said it in the consulting and training he does, is closing is really not a skill, right? There's no skillful in it. Like, look, the plane's going to come down. So if you look at your closes, there are about 6 closes. You have your direct close, you have your minor point, your alternate choice, you have your opportunity close, next step, and then you're weighing. Forget the ones in the middle. Take the 2 corners, right? Take direct close. That's your Nike close. What are your thoughts on moving forward? It's a great question, right? And then the other thing is the weighing close. Hey, here's all the reasons you said you don't want to do this against the reasons you said you want to, which is kind of like a Ben Franklin close. The only reason you use that after the direct close is because that's probably the exact conversation they're going to have once they leave. They're the 2 most powerful closes. There's no skill in that. But going back to what Brett said on the Ginsu knife is, that's exactly what happens when that commercial shows up. Do I really need this? As salespeople, going back to pipeline management, here's your problem. You're looking at every deal. So like when you put something in your pipeline, you're sitting there going, oh, I think I'll sell a suite here. Well, when you put it in your pipeline, you should probably put it in and they're going to sell a partial plan. As you move down your pipeline and gets closer to close, then you up the opportunity, right? 2 is you got to be looking for all the reasons why they don't want to buy as you bring them through the sales process. And 3 is if you go back to, you got to ask yourself this question: were you able to sell time to them? Because that's your greatest qualifier here.
If you can't sell time, you're going to struggle.
All day.
So you make a great point. So you walk through all the closes, and I'm going to be honest with you, I almost barely teach a close because we're in 2018.
Yeah, it's the next logical step.
So I'm a bigger believer, and so you guys can I start with Allison and then we can move to Lance. Like, I'm actually a bigger believer that the open at this point is way more important than the close. The way that you talk to people, the way that you engage people at this point with how cluttered they are and how everything is going on, the engagement is so important. And one of the things that I talk about all the time is respecting your time and respecting their time, which means the intention that you start the conversation with oftentimes helps create the environment that you're buying. So can you talk about the importance of the intention reaching out in sales? Because I think a lot of times we can hide behind our badge, the badge that we represent, to be able to get a meeting. But there's all a difference between a meeting just to be like, I met with the Dolphins today, and a meeting where like I thought about buying a suite with the Dolphins today.
I have people who joke, people who've been on my sales team before, people who've been in training before, and they call it Schuller Sales 101. Like it's my primary rule that I preach all the time. If it doesn't add value, don't let it come out of your mouth.
Yeah.
It's all about how are you adding value? Because if you think about, like we talk about pleasantries in training, pleasantries isn't necessarily a step in the sales. It's expected as a part of our sales process, but it's not, it's not something that you check off. If you go in talking pleasantries or small talk, like, oh, geez, Brett, like, God, it's so hot down in Houston. It's only June. Can you imagine what it's going to be like in August? Like, that's small talk. Pleasantries, but what has it done for anybody, right? Like absolutely nothing. But if I open a meeting and allow you to talk about you, right, and use that small talk by like, geez, Brett, this facility is really nice, or how many offices do you have here locally in Houston? I'm still allowing you to talk about you, but I'm adding value in building that rapport and also giving me a lot of valuable information as a sales rep. You have to talk in terms of them. People like to talk about themselves. They don't want to talk about fluff that makes it like that awkward driving stick shift up a hill for the first time where it's really jerky and unnatural when you shift into like, okay, now that we've talked about the weather, like, let's shift to business. I have about 30 minutes set aside just for what we're going to talk about. Well, then now it's weird.
Well, I don't think people understand what rapport means, right? Like,
No.
So in life, rapport is like, well, I really hope you like me. Here's like, yes, let's talk about the weather. Because that's what happens. But, you know, especially when it comes to business and people spending money, you know, rapport comes down to, do they trust you to be the person to help them provide value? And if they believe you're the person to provide value, then they'll do their business with you. But
sure.
I think we spend a lot of time, again, at that point, hiding behind the badge that we don't do it. So can you talk about what are you seeing, I mean, both of you, because you're working with a lot more professional sports teams than I am right now. What are you seeing in the space that, whether it's social selling or when you're in the trainings, that you do think cuts through the clutter and is really engaging? And what's the BS that we just talked about that's way more window dressing than anything else?
Well, a couple things. So we're asked this all the time. I think the R word that salespeople struggle with is everything what we hear constantly on the save side of things, service side of thing, and the sales side is it's all about relationships. I got to be frank with you. It's not like it drives me insane. Like, because the R word's like, well, you all have to understand. Well, you got to understand, all of you, if you're listening to this podcast, relationships are outcomes. They're because of what you did. Number two, in pro sports is your relationship goes as far as the last favor you did for them. Okay? So, like, that's an outcome. So if you go back to what Brett was saying, rapport, I can go through a Wendy's drive-through window and have rapport with somebody. It's an interconnectivity. It's avataring. That's what's working. So if you're talking about social media, one of the things you want to talk about with social media is you're avataring at some level. There is a level of conversation. So here's a little plug real quick. My new book, if you're Selling's an Away Game, it's on pre-sale right now in Amazon. So went out last night. So ironically enough, Brett did not know this, but it happened last night. Our first step of our new sales process, our success sales process, starts with the word connect. And that connect piece actually comes with social media. You are having conversations with people through LinkedIn, through Twitter. Some of you are actually not very good salespeople because you're on Tinder with unlimited swipes. I mean, it's kind of an issue, or Bumble, right? But so, like, you're connecting all over the place with people. Like, you're having conversations. But what you have to understand, what's not working is you got to understand you're not going to have a crucial conversation with somebody on social. So it's very hard to describe value on social media through one-way communication. Like, if you're dealing with somebody who has a question on an objection on price and stuff, I deal with a lot of grays. I'm not saying it's impossible, right? Somebody said to me the other day, like, Lance, you don't respect social media. Well, shit, like, go follow my social media. I'll bring my social game with anybody, right? I can think of the first big social sell I ever heard. If any of you know Mika White, Mika just got married. I'm trying to think of her maiden name. I can't think of it, but she was with Legends for years, Cavs. She's an SVP with Lear Sports right now. Shoot. Like 8 years ago, she sold a $3 million deal when she was with Live Nation. She's the CEO of Chiquita Banana on Twitter. Like, bottom line, like, I get it, but you're not going to do the whole pitch through there.
It's like,
So that's working. You can't confuse, like, you're going to make that interconnectivity, those avatar moves, you're going to make them through social and little bits. Here's the other thing that's changed.
Well, I'll say this, so real quick, so please go. So, yeah. But one of the things you can do, because I think this was important for me when I was doing sales training, is you can create curiosity through social media. And I think that's so I think that's the thing, that you can create curiosity and FOMO, right? Through that channel. And I think that's what people miss. There's so much that's put on there that is trying to sell something as opposed to creating. And I thought, so when I was entering this, there weren't a lot of it. So I'll take credit here. I don't think I deserve any, but I'll take it. There weren't a lot of sales trainers that were actively putting their content on social media.
Sure.
And I did. I put everything. Like I put stuff you'd see in my sales training, stuff I was going to say, because I thought it created a point of differentiation for me from those people in sports that have been hired for the last 20 years without competition. And so there were a lot of loyalties and there were a lot of this. For people to hire me, they were going to have to understand why I would have been a good hire.
So you advance interest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think every single one of you should be doing that. There's a gal in San Francisco right now that I would probably say is about the classiest person. She works for the 49ers. Her name's Haley Canosi.
I know her.
Right.
That's hilarious. We both know.
Yeah, well, she's with the
Timberwolves.
and she's so classy by how she puts her evidence out there and creates conversation. I can think of a picture last week where she just posted up 3 white cloth. She sells special events for the Niners. She put like 10, 15 tables on the field, white cloth. Like she's sending a message saying, you know what? If you want to do a beautiful event, you need to talk to me. Is she going to sell the event there? No. She might advance it down the pipeline, but she's still going to have to wheel back, have a conversation with somebody, get into an evaluation, diagnosis, and prescribe specific.
100%.
Well, you made a comment earlier, like, no one's staring at their phone waiting, like, oh my God, I hope Brett calls me today. Like, where's he at, right? Nobody's doing that. They have lives, like outside of a team, outside of the company, like they have lives. So we talk about hiding behind the badge or hiding behind the brand or the name. Like people are going on about their business. They have things to do. And so to be ignorant enough to think that like our name or our brand is going to be an attention getter that's going to stop them in their tracks, it's not. Like you have to get them over that preoccupied mindset into focusing like to generate that rapport or to generate that interest, to focus more on you or on the fact that there could be a need here that we may be able to address with further conversation. All it's about is capturing somebody's attention. That connect piece isn't about selling. It's about piquing someone's interest enough that they're willing to talk to you.
Well, that's where social. That's where the misnomers of social selling. I saw somebody post up a couple of weeks ago. Well, send emails out. That's social selling. No, guys and gals, that's not social selling. We've been sending emails out for 25 plus years. Actually, I'm sold that that's what I started doing when I was selling. So that's not social selling. It's the interconnectivity. It's driving it down the pipeline. But your crucial conversations. Now, remember something else. Sending's not selling. Like, you got to get in your head. And 2, you got to know the buyer's mindset a little bit. Look, I get the buyers are asking you to say, just send me this, just send me that, right? They want you to send stuff. That's where you're going to pump the brakes a little bit. You got to decide, hey, what's the implication if I send this? If I deal with this objection or give the pricing without any kind of backup or conversation, am I going to lose? And I think the other thing you guys all have to think about as you're listening to this podcast, really important, and I love the fact that Brett's doing this podcast. I think it's so valuable. Listen to the folks that he's had on this podcast recently. I think Teddy Click was just on this. He does a great job. He has great insight. I think bottom line is where we are in sales right now is 15, 20 years ago, the salesperson held the information. All of it. Right, all of it. And what's happened now is the problem is the people you're talking to may have as much or more information than you do, has already formed an opinion, and that's where you have to avatar to get in the buyer's mind. Yeah. And you got to create every opportunity to get in their mind and get them willing participants sharing what's in their head.
But I mean, so that's a great point. Allison makes a great point too, and I think this is what you do on social media should replicate what you do over email, should replicate what you do over the phone, and that's a huge miss, right? Because we throw away voice messages, we throw away emails, we throw away my favorite one, we check in, right? Like I'm calling to check in and calling to see how your experience was, and we forget that we forget that we need to add value in every touch point, in every conversation, and there needs to be a reason why we're calling them, and that reason can be very simply be, right? Like even when we're just calling someone about an individual game ticket, listen, stop, you're spending way too much money if you care to come out again, right? But that statement of intent and that statement of expression is so much more valuable than
we're driving some insight, Or if you go back to what you started this whole thing off, if we go back to that third and third and third, that checking in could be that group that you have to farm and you got to stay top of mind, right? Like it could be that group that, hey, they're not ready to buy now, but we got to stay on the priority list.
But you still have that value while you're doing it.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not just a matter of, formality, like, oh, just want to make sure I stay at the top of your list. Like, hey, remember my name. You still have to provide some amount of value. If it doesn't add value, don't let it come out of your mouth. Like, you have to provide something add-on for them to want to.
There's no check-in call anymore.
Right.
Because check-in calls, all the noise they get from Blue and Best Buy and everything that infiltrates their inbox every single day, that there's no cutting through the clutter regardless, because they're probably getting an email from every other sports team every day.
That's so true. From
the city. And and this goes back to even when we only had email to be able to one of the stories I'll never forget was at CEB, my year when I was on the road and I was traveling, I hit my goal basically the last day of the year because
all the time at the goal.
It was very scary. It was my first year on the road, so it was a big accomplishment. And LexisNexis came back. Remember LexisNexis? LexisNexis came back to me on the last day of the year, and they essentially said, we appreciate the way that you've brought value to the conversation overall. We believe that CEB could add value to us through the interactions we've had with you. We've got $19,000 left in our budget. Would you be able to spend it with you?
Would you take that in cash?
Yeah. Remember too that you're your product, you're your own product a lot of times, right? So, people are buying you. So if you don't conduct yourself with the right decorum, the right follow-up, the appropriate touch points, credibility, like how you're communicating or engaging with your customers, like why would they want to engage in it and expose their customer base to you or your brand if you don't hold their standard of what that looks like for them?
Sports falls behind a little bit, right? Like we fall behind.
Last of the buggy.
So we fall behind our athletes to say our athletes will lead this.
Sure.
And you look at a lot of other industries and other people. You're looking at superstar salespeople who, like, real estate is a great way. Like, how many people do you know that are real estate agents that are on Instagram and Facebook?
Yeah.
And they're everywhere, and they're creating value every time they're on it. They're doing live videos, and they're doing that. I played golf, like, right before I went to the Dynamo. I played golf with an insurance agent who ended up being, like, the top insurance salesperson for State Farm in Connecticut. And I asked him, I was like, how do you spend your time? Like, he's like 90% self-prospecting. He's like, I need to do whatever it takes to bring people in. And I was like, what percent of your time do you spend, like, pitching and closing? Like, that 90% can't be right. And he was like, no, like 10% of my time is pitching, closing, all that stuff. 90%
into the pipe all the time.
Which goes to the pipe. Like,
Which
goes back to full circle.
It does.
But like on that last piece though, is if you go back to what we jumped this thing on, which is solid pipeline, most salespeople love the word maybe. They love everybody. They'd much rather have a maybe than anything else. I remember the first girl that I ever had asked out. Look, Eileen Moore, it's actually in my book, right? So I'm in Sister Consolatus class. I decided to do what every strong prospector does in 8th grade. So I sent a note, right? So I passed a note to Ricky Slutowski, who passes it to Mike Tinnany, who passes it to Robin Bondi, who passes it to Susan Maloney, who passes it to Eileen Moore. Eileen spent some intimate time with it. She puts her hand around it, 15 seconds or so, folds it back up, 8 folds standard. Sends it to Robin Bondi, to Susan Maloney, to Mike Tinnany, to slats back to me. I spend 30 seconds with it. I opened it up. I do the little pumpernickel. I'm freaking jack at recess sharing it with my boys. My buddy Slats goes, what did it say? Mike Tinnany said, what did it say? I'm like, dude, boys, it said maybe. Right? Slats goes, that's brutal. Tinnany goes, dude, that's awesome. And Tinnany goes, what's your problem, Slats? Like, he got a maybe. Eileen Moore said maybe. Slats goes, she feels bad for Lance. Like, look at Lance. He looks like Howdy Doody. He can't wear corduroys because he catch fire. Like, Like, bottom line is she feels bad. And Tinity's like, this is great. And I go, Slats, man, she said maybe. And Slats will never forget, goes, maybe sucks. And a lot of you said maybe. You love maybes. You want a yes or no. If your pipeline's right, you can do, and I said this in my video yesterday, actually. I'm always asked, if I were to hire salespeople, who would you hire? Well, my Hall of Fame two hires, there's two salespeople I hire. They're both VPs now in pro sports. One is Eric Sudol. He is the VP of sponsorship for Legends and the Cowboys simultaneously, runs both, has about 40 salespeople under, maybe over 30 salespeople. The other one's Nick Frasco. He runs sponsorship and suite sales for the Browns. When they were both younger, I would tell you, I don't know if they were the most skilled. I will tell you they had the best pipelines. And they always had a 3X to a 5X goal or pipeline to goal. So they had 3 times as many things in their pipeline minimum that they had goal-wise. So here's the thing, guys and gals. They were able to look at somebody and walk away.
Yeah.
And how many times are you willing to walk away? Most of you aren't willing to walk away because you essentially need to hit about 100% of the time because you don't have enough in your pipeline to walk away. You need to pillow fight with that person to get the sale done.
It goes back to the conversation you had in the beginning when you said you don't want to go to the sales meeting and tell your manager, like, oh, I only have 5 or 10 things in my pipeline. That's real.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And what's the, I mean, and I talk about this in every sales training, what's the email or the voicemail that gets returned the most? It's the one where you break up with them.
Exactly.
So true. We just did that today.
Like,
so let me read one for you. It's called The Bus. Okay. So I'm going to read something. Give me a second, guys.
So we'll end this here. So we're going to end it.
And so this is from. This is
over at the bus.
This is The Bus. This is something we just applied at the Houston Rockets, right? So let me get it for you. Okay, this is called The Bus, and the reason it's called The Bus is because you literally are going to run the bus over yourself and make sure that the bus runs you over well enough that you're dead. All right. So this email was sent to my friend at the Houston Rockets, my man, DeAndre Shaw. So DeAndre Shaw had been calling on Jay and his family for floor seats. All right. And he had got this. I don't know if you ever had this happen yet. Old Jay went ghost from about January 1st till about the end of February. So I'm going to get confirmation that's
most sports sales.
Yeah, so February 24th, 2018 at 5:25, DeAndre Shaw sends the bus email to Jay. And he says this, and I'll tell you what it does. So don't go half tilted off. And by the way, if you use this, you must give me credit at least twice. And then you can say, I heard once, and then fifth time maybe, as I've always done. So,
right.
All right, done. All right, so here it is. You don't want it after this, but I want some credit. And if I hear it out the street, I'm calling it. This is my original thought. And it was originated with MSG during the financial crisis when they were selling suites. This is where we originated the concept. So it says, Jay, last time we talked on the phone, we decided on floor seats for you and your family. I've reached out to you several times without a response. I must have done something or didn't do something that left a bad taste in your mouth. Again, I apologize. I would like to get some feedback for future efforts to improve my service to other clients. Best regards, DeAndre Shaw. Now, if you know DeAndre, he's pretty cut and dry. He's not a ham and egger. He just gets it done. That was sent February 21st, 2018 at 5:25 p.m. On February 21st, 2018, 6:37, after 6 weeks of poltergeist, dark, 30, this guy gone, Jay reemerges. Jay says, DeAndre, I'm in Europe. I'm sorry you did nothing wrong. My company sent me to Europe. Once I'm back, I'll get with you. But please don't think you did anything wrong. I lose time frame here in Europe. Let me close this deal, and I'll reach out to you and only, sir. Respectively, Jay DiMaggio, CFA. It's the couple things before you go off half-cocked and think you know what you're doing here. The subject line said, my apologies. Here's the play. One is you need to look up the word manipulation. There's 2 definitions of the word manipulation. The first definition is to act in a skillful manner. The other one is to act cleverly with kind of ill intent. We're going to go with the first one, manipulation. Manipulation is not bad. You do it all the time. So all the time. So you need to understand that. 2, you got to all understand to sell is human. People buy from people they like, trust, and respect. Mark McCormick wrote in his book, What They Don't Teach You at the Harvard Business School. If all things were equal, people buy from people they like. If all things weren't so equal, they'd still buy from people they like.
And Daniel Pink wrote a book literally called
To Sell is Human. That's exactly right. That's why I got the quote. To Sell is Human. So what DeAndre is doing is he's saying, look, man, I'm going to give you a better reputation to live up to. We talked about this. I met with you. I gave you tickets. I've entertained you. This is what we promised each other. And you know what? Just do me right. Tell me if I did something that left a bad taste in your mouth. And you know what? I guarantee you, within 24 hours, somebody's going to call you back. And guess what? If they don't call you back or respond to you, they ain't human. Walk away.
You need to break up.
Walk. Break. Done.
Yep.
So I appreciate the time, bro.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was a blast. Listen, we've been looking at the sound check, and it's gone between red and green the whole time. So I don't care. We're just gonna put this out. People can decipher it or break it down. We'll just go with it because I had a blast. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Dude, that was great.
That was so much fun.
That was-